Okay, without further ado, I'll give you a little bit of history about the Canadian Society of Association Executives and who we are, and maybe one or two of you may have heard of us, and if not, that's okay as well. What we are is the association that tries to support those folks who are working in the association and not-for-profit sector. It's a voluntary membership to belong to CSAE. You don't need to be a member to take advantage of our products and services, but there are certain member benefits that you get that non-members won't get. For example, exclusive communications like our newsletters or even discounts on our products and services. We have 2,400 members across Canada, and they're in two categories, executive and business. So executive members are simply the people who work for the associations and not-for-profits, whether they're a membership director, a government relations director, a marketing manager, communications professional. They're working for some kind of association. And then the business members are people who are trying to provide products or services or consulting services, for example, to those different associations. So that's the two categories. So we have 1,700 executive members and then 700 business members right now. And what we try to do to support these folks working in the association world is to offer out there, some of it's free, some of it's we charge for it, resources like Association Magazine that we publish. There's an online version. It's available in print as well. There's the website that has an access to a tools and templates library for different subjects. There's education that we offer. So there's the online education program as well as face-to-face education in all aspects of association management. And the face-to-face education is delivered through our annual conference and the various seminars that we organize. I think one of the main focal points of our year is our annual conference, which is a 3-day educational event, moves around the country, and it's everything related to running an association or not-for-profit organization. And then our various seminars can be half a day, 1 day, 2 day in length. Some examples would be our CEO Symposium, which is designed for the Chief Staff Officer and the Chair of the Board of the Directors to come to and work together for a 2-day session. We also had, in this past year, a social media summit, which was a 2-day event. We have a 1-day governance summit. If you're wondering about how do you deal with or manage your board of directors, for example, that would be something of interest to, the governance summit would be something of interest to you. We also offer networking for association professionals to connect with each other through the nationally organized events like our conference and our symposia, but also through our chapters. The way we're structured is that we do have a national office that organizes these, that's run by staff, but we also have 7 chapters across the country which are volunteer run. We really depend on our volunteers to make education happen in the local chapters. So they go from, Vancouver, Edmonton, Manitoba, there's the Toronto, Hamilton area, which is our Trillium chapter. There's Ottawa, Gatineau, there's Montreal, and there's Halifax. So those are the 7 chapters across the country that we rely on to deliver local education and networking, whether it's a lunch and learn or a breakfast session or a leadership day. And then in our publications, I mentioned our magazine earlier, but we also have a number of books that we create and distribute ourselves, and then other titles that we license in. So it could be 101 effective tips to improve your membership marketing plan, or it could be a guide for directors of not-for-profit organizations. So you name it, we probably have it in terms of association-related topics. So those are the ways that we try to support people who are working in the association world. And then I'm going to expand a little bit about the education, and that's going to be the focus of today's topic. I mentioned our CAE program, and that is our online education program, and it's the only program in Canada that leads to the CAE designation, so the Certified Association Executive Designation. It used to be in a binder format until about 1997-98, when we were able to move it online, and we've improved it ever since in its current form. And it's based on 44, count them, not-for-profit management competencies that someone needs to know and to master if they're going to be an effective and competent association manager, director, leader. And there are currently over 400 CAEs in Canada and a few internationally as well, because our program is available, since it's online, It's available internationally, and we do have some CAE graduates from the United Kingdom and from Australia as well, but predominantly most of the graduates are in Canada. And here are the 44. You don't have to memorize them all, and if you really want to know what they are in detail, send me an email. I'll be happy to send you more information about them. So they are grouped into 6 domains, and these domains, and this is what our courses are based on. So the first 3 domains, for example, leadership, structure and environment, direction and strategy, they're all covered actually in our first course, so that's a pretty heavy course. The second domain, membership services, covered in our second course. Third, operation support, it's our third course, CAE 300. Products and services is our 4th course, and then the 5th course in the program is a synthesis of everything that someone has learned pretty much throughout the time they're doing the program. So CSAE has been offering this education to develop association managers for a number of years now, based on these competencies. And what most people do is they go through the program. So they take all 5 courses, and when they're done the courses, they're now in a position to write their certification exam. So the final step to obtaining your CAE designation is that you have to do your certification exam. And typically someone might take 2.5 years to go through the program and do their exam and finally get their designation. So they really have to be committed to what they're undertaking. A few years ago, almost 9 years ago, 2 members of CSAE took it upon themselves to help create the prior learning assessment process. So up until 9 years ago, that didn't exist at all for CSAE. If you wanted the designation, you had to go through the program. And so it's one member who came from the Canadian Payroll Association and another member who came from the Forum for International Trade Training, who both had their CAE designations as well. They'd gone through the program. And so they drew on their experience and what they're doing in their own organizations to help CSAE start the prior learning assessment process. And so what it is, so I think in 2004 is when they began, and we had maybe 3 or 4 CAEs get their designation that way. And we've just been building on that and improving the process ever since. So it's based on the same 44 competencies that someone would have mastered in going through the program. So what we've done is we've taken these competencies and put them into a grid, and we've made it possible for someone to look at their career and their life and work experience to see, have they learned and have they mastered these competencies that they would have gained by going through the program. So that's what our PLAR process is designed to do, because we recognize that experience, learning, knowledge comes from many paths, right? So we wanted for the association world to make it possible for people to get recognition for their experience, or even to gain credit towards some of the courses by going through this PLAR process. So some of the requirements for an applicant is that they would need to have that experience. So we require at least 10 years of more senior management experience in an association or some other kind of not-for-profit organization, whether it's a foundation or a charity or a council. Then they would need to be CSA members, and they would take on the task of putting together their professional portfolio and gathering their evidence to support their experience and their idea that they could get the CAE designation that way. And there is a fee, of course, for this, because it's a fair amount of work to go through the portfolios once we've received them. But that's what we wanted to do, is to create another path for getting that designation, and we've been doing it almost 9 years now. And it's for the people who have gone through this, a few of them have remarked that it's a very affirming process. You don't realize how much you've done in your career, or how much you've learned or mastered or taught other people, until you have to start sitting down and documenting it all. So that's nice. Even though it's a certain amount of work, it's good to hear that it's an affirming process for the people who have gone through it. So what happens when that person decides to send in that portfolio? So the person will start with a self-assessment grid, and they will go through all 44 competencies, and they'll rate themselves. They've on a scale from 1 to 5. Either they have no experience at all, or they've mastered this competency, and they'll describe their experience. So they'll begin that way for all 44 competencies, and then they'll go through whatever they have in their files to support the experience that they claim they have. And they have to describe their roles. So if they claim to have experience in strategic planning, for example, they need to describe what was their role, what was their involvement, what was the result of the strategic planning process. Were they merely bystanders, or were they actively creating it? Were they responsible for getting other people to work on it with them, for example? So they build their portfolio, they have their supporting documents. So you can imagine it's about this thick when it comes into our offices. They need to have references, and we require at least 2 references from the association or not-for-profit world, and preferably one of them to be a CAE themselves, so that they are familiar with the program and what somebody would have to do in going through it, and their payment, of course. So when all of this comes into us, it goes off to our panel of assessors. So, and they will take 2 to 3 months, it could be, to go through all of that, to go through each area, look at what this person says they've done, look at the supporting documentation, and then come out with a decision. And the decision could be that they get it outright, or that there could be some more documentation that's needed, or there could be some recognition given for certain areas of the competencies, but then a recommendation perhaps to undertake 2 or 3 courses, or whatever, 1, 2, 3 courses. Wherever there has been a gap that's been identified, there could be a recommendation that the person now has to do these courses to fill in that gap. So there could be a variety of outcomes that come to the person after they go through this process. But it's, I think this year we had, I don't remember it. For our annual conference, just a note, we recognize the people who have graduated for the CAE every year, and I think in this year's annual conference there were 2 people who had it through the PLAR channel. So we do have people every year who get it that way. I think what I will do now actually is, before we go into the actual process, and it's my expert assessor who is here with us today, who's going to explain that process. I myself am not an assessor. I am not allowed to be an assessor. What happens is when a portfolio comes in, I'll review it to see if it's as complete as we can make it before it goes off to the assessment panel. So I'm familiar with the competency areas and the kind of evidence someone should be submitting when they send in their portfolio. So I try to make sure it's complete to make a little less work for the assessment panel before it goes off. And we'll tell someone to say, well, we need something in this area just to streamline the process and make it a little more efficient. But it's really the assessment panel who goes through it in detail to say, okay, what they've shown and what they've demonstrated really means that they've mastered this competency, and the degree of mastery I'll let our assessor explain to you as well. So that's what happens on the candidate side, and then they wait. So in those 8 to 12 weeks, the assessors do have the portfolio, they're going through it, and then I'm going to ask one of our assessors who's here today to go through to explain what that process is, and the thinking that goes behind the assessment of a portfolio, and how a decision is arrived at. So, ask Christine.
So who's tired of seeing me? I recognize some faces in the room. As noted, I'm Christine from the Canadian Society for Medical Laboratory Science. And a couple of years ago, I joined CSAE to receive my designation in 2008, and I became aware of the prior learning assessment program and was interested in it, but I didn't meet the qualifications myself because I'd only been in the association world for about 3 or 4 years. So my decision when I did the CSAE or the CAE designation was to complete it from start to finish. And so my frame of reference when I came on board as an assessor, having worked at the Canadian Society for Medical Lab Science, and we've been doing foreign qualification recognition for internationally educated medical laboratory technologists since 1999 on a large scale. My job was to manage that process, and I've been formally trained in prior learning assessment. So that was an interesting thing that I brought to the table with CSAE, was some formal training and some experience in prior learning assessment, not just subject matter expertise. So one of the things that CSAE makes sure that they do is that they have more than one assessor on a file, which is a best practice for people doing prior learning assessment. Each of us work independently. I currently have a partner who's out in Newfoundland, and we both have the CAE designation and some professional expertise. Mine's on the short end of the scale. My colleague's on the larger end of the scale, having worked in the association world for over 25 years. And he also brings teaching experience. So he's one of the CSAE educators. He teaches in, I think, course 200. So he brings to the table a very different frame of reference than mine, which is he knows what the current students are bringing to the table, what kind of discussions they're having, what their gaps are. So that helps him with a very different lens for doing prior learning assessment as well. And we have some PLA expertise, and obviously the identity, don't tell anyone, is confidential. So just like in the prior learning assessment world, we tell people that your file's been assessed by a team, which is actually true. And I'm sure there's a day where, I'm not available to do a file. CSAE will have additional assessors on files as well. So it's important that we do the work independently, but the decisions are not made by myself. We make recommendations to CSAE. And if they need additional clarification, they will seek that from the panel. So part of the assessment process involves literally comparing an individual and a file to the 44 competencies. There's a lot of them. So in the association world, many of the people who have a CAE designation, and you see there's 400 of them in Canada, they come from a variety of different backgrounds. Some are high school graduates, some have MBAs, some are lawyers. So you have literally everyone who's working in the association world. Think about the people that you work with if you're a regulator. We have people that have grown up in the association world, and you have people that have got tired of working in the for-profit world and want to find work with more meaning. They move into the association management world. So you end up with people who have, in many cases, management training, but not specific to the business of running an association. And remember, one of the fundamental things about an association is one chooses to belong to you. It's not the same as running a regulatory body. There's lots of things that have cross-pollination. But when you run an association, which I do, the most important thing that I have to do is constantly be aware of my members' needs, what kind of products, services, what's the return on investment, how much are they willing to pay. So when you start looking in a not-for-profit at key markers of success, it's not how much money you make, it's how many members you retain. And the association world, many associations are losing membership share by the day because with today's economic reality, people are choosing to vote with their feet. CSAE, however, has experienced membership gain. So that means CSAE is offering something to the association world that no one else is. So that's a good thing. The other thing I'll be so crass as to mention is that the salary surveys that are published by CSAE have proven that people who have the CAE designation are paid more. So there actually is a tangible personal goal. This is not why I did it, but there is a tangible recognition piece that comes with this designation because it is so specific to the field. And I would say that the uptake of files has been more lately. It's certainly become more popular, and I think as people continue to have a conversation about recognition for prior learning, what is PLA, or they maybe know someone who's gone through the program and has been, in their mind, successful, it has its appeal too. So as I said, we assess a portfolio, and the portfolio, we're almost at the point, just like my prior learning assessment world in the lab field, where I can almost tell you based on the weight of the file how it's going to fare, which sounds pretty terrible, but when you consider it's an evidence-based paper project. If you say you've got experience in education in 44 competencies, that's not going to fit in a do-a-tank. That's going to fit in like a 4-inch binder, right? And as Josette said, when you tell me you have experience in education and you rank yourself a 5 out of 5 on strategic planning, does that mean I showed up twice for strategic planning and I didn't contribute anything, or were you in charge of conducting the SWOT analysis with your chapters across Canada? So that evidence will look very different, right? So just like when I did prior learning assessment for CSMLS, show me. And there's two different schools of thought with prior learning assessment. There's people that believe you should assume people come with nothing. And the other school of thought is assume they've met their criteria and you're looking for the chink in the armor. We're somewhere in between. We assume everyone who's applied, they've been vetted by the office, they come with something. And now the question is, are they looking for credit for one course? Are they looking for credit for everything? Are they looking to go right to the designation? And before I had done assessments with CSAE, and we'd had philosophical conversations before, what do you mean you give a certification without exam, right? Because that's my world, is high stakes certification exams. I would never just accept someone's giant portfolio documenting their history in medical lab science on behalf of regulators without actually putting them through a test. So slowly over time, we had some great conversations about the philosophy, the sort of evidence that's necessary, and over time there have been some people each year that have been able to demonstrate they have the knowledge, skills, attitudes, and experience in the 44 competency domains Oh, and this is over a lifetime. If you've been working for 5 years, this isn't going to happen. But if you've been running your association for 20, 25 years, and you've been doing everything, whether it's marketing, you're running events, you're looking for new products and services, you're running an accreditation program, you're running a certification program, you have a continuing competency requirements, and you've been doing all of those things, and you can prove that, you may be prior learning assessment all the way through to the end and be granted the designation without certification. And there's enough evidence in the files that there are some people who have met that. So we literally use, like any lab person would, I've got an 18-page document, which was created to help me create a decision-making matrix. And so we literally, the person does the self-assessment, but the purpose of self-assessment is that it needs to be validated. And as an assessor, what that helps me do is it helps me look at a file and decide, is there anything on this? Should I bother? Should I be trying to read in between all of the mess in this file to find great detailed information on strategic planning? Or did the person literally say, I've never done one? Or I learned about it at Mohawk College when I did my certificate in not-for-profit management, or I did history of ethics in healthcare in my MBA program, but I haven't studied ethics as it may apply to my association work. So we literally look through all of the documents to validate the self-assessment. And I will have to say, in some cases with CSAE, people are much harder on themselves than they should be. And I think that's because a lot of people who work in the association world grow into the jobs sometimes. And they may or may not be aware of all of the incredible things that they're doing. So sometimes when we look at the information, you know, our assessments will be higher than their self-assessment. But the important thing is there is a numerical figure that has to be applied, and 80% of mastery has to happen in the competency domains. And then we map those domains to all of the courses. There's 5 courses. And we literally say, you know, there's only 30% in products and services. That's the one that seems to be the sticking point for most people. If you've been working in regulation, you've been working in a related field, chances are you haven't had to look at membership services. Like if you haven't been running an alumni association, you haven't had to interview your alumni to find out what products they need, at what price point, when would you retire a program, how do you run an affinity program. So we're literally looking for the map on 80% of each of the courses, and only then would we decide maybe that someone has sufficient evidence to either proceed to exam or to go right through to the designation. And one of the things that I love about this PLA program is that there's a variety of outcomes. Some people are really transparent. They say they only want credit for 1 or 2 courses because they're already taking 3 or 4 others. So it helps us as an assessor if someone's absolutely clear about what they think they deserve credit for, which is the underpinnings of a self-assessment. So some of the things that people will get credit for is a single course, or they don't get partial credit for a course. You either get credit or you don't, and you either are recommended to take it or you don't. And some people, it's kind of like a crapshoot. Some people just throw everything together and they hope they make it, and some enroll in the program and some don't. They're trying to see what they can get credit for. And that's one of the interesting things about prior learning assessment, is some people know no matter what, my end goal is to get the CAE designation. And others have heard about the thing and they think, well, this might be an easy way to get a designation, put it on my resume. But there's a very robust assessment process that goes in. So it's always left up to the individual to provide further evidence if they didn't. Or we've even had a file lately where there's really specific information. They've documented things they've done, but we literally went back with a list of 10 things. If you can give me this and this and this, I can give you full credit for it. So I think that's helpful for the office as well, because it's very specific feedback to the individual. I think one of the worst things you can do to anyone on a prior learning assessment is tell them no and provide no reasons, right? How would they know what standards they're being compared to if you didn't tell them? Yeah, and so some people receive no credit for the material in the file. And they're given the opportunity to send in additional information or to choose to take the courses. And there are some people, crazy as it sounds, that take 1 or 2 courses and they're done. They just wanted to get specific knowledge about marketing in the membership world. And there's people that get all the way to the end of the 5th course. I work with someone right now who's not sure if she's going to do the designation. Well, I think she's mad. Why would you do all the work and not do the designation? But I think she's afraid of the test. I have to say, it is a robust certification exam. And I fully believe that when I earned those 3 letters after my name, they were worth every moment and every bit of sweat. It's a 48-hour exam, administered over the internet, and you literally have to show me how those competencies have been integrated into your exam. It's not multiple choice. So you're probably thinking, oh, easy, 3 essay questions. I literally went to school with someone who was flying back from Australia who thought they'd be able to do it on the plane. No. Like, I remember them, they were in my class and they basically got through one question and had to email from another airport and said, I'm done, I'm out. I can't finish this. Because it's literally the capstone of everything you've done. And so if as an assessor where somebody's just baseline, they're only 80%, there's nothing over and above, there's no 100% scores, we may say, we recommend they proceed to exam. At the end of the day, if you're going to be certified, you can prove it on your exam. Yeah, I can talk about the exam forever. Just because it was such, in my humble opinion, a valid, fair assessment of a capstone of 2.5 years of work and experience in the association world. And one of the good things about this program too is that there's always an opportunity for them to submit supplemental documentation. A lot of people who run prior learning assessment programs, what's in the file on the day you submit it and the day it goes to assessment is all that matters. Whereas CSAE has allowed that there is some flexibility in the program, and that's good. So one of the things I just wanted to talk about, and most of you are aware of some of the best practices in prior learning assessment, and Urban Whittaker in the PLA best practices has just 6 criteria. Credit should be awarded for college level only, not applicable to profession. So this is sort of a US framework of what these best practices should look like. Competency levels and credit awards should be made only by subject matter experts. That's important because, as Josette said, the office doesn't do the assessment, even though they are the mother of all association management companies. It lends great credibility when your certification officer doesn't make that decision. They've handed it over to subject matter experts, so they administer all of the process, all of the application, all of the fees. You know, we don't think you have enough documentation, so they do some client counseling. I don't. I literally tell the office what I think we still need on the file or what our decision is when I work collaboratively with the other assessor. But it is in the best interest that you don't do those assessments yourself. That's how you build sort of the firewall and the objectivity behind it, because I don't know who these people are. They're not members. I don't even know if they're a member of CSAE at that point. Like, it's not, that's administrative. I look at the subject matter expertise, subject matter in the file only. Credit should be awarded only in the context for which it's appropriate. Credit should not be given twice for the same learning. Full disclosure should be made of policies and procedures, and CSAE does a very good job of that, and assessors need to have adequate training on an ongoing basis. So those are pretty simple principles. A lot of assessment situations, though, don't necessarily conform to them all. So if you're doing PLA, I would simply just go to those standards and see which you have areas of opportunity on and which you're far ahead of the curve. And as I said, we comply with 5 out of 6 because we're not awarding college credit, right? It's a professional designation handed out by an association. And one of the other things I just wanted to point out, most people are not aware, but a true certification program, which is what CSAE is running, is you have to have multiple ways to qualify. That's one of the ISO standards for you to be running a true certification program. Many people, and I always think of Red Cross does first aid certification. That's not a certification, that's a certificate. A certificate means you take my course and I give you a certificate at the end when you write my test. A certification is multiple ways to qualify, and so CSA is actually running a true certification program because you can take their content or you can fill your gaps another way and you have an opportunity for assessment. And so that's one of the subtle differences between certificates and certifications, but it's an important distinction that has to be made. And the last note is just a testimonial from someone from the Canadian Bar Association. The opportunity to receive my CAE designation well into my career was most appreciated. Completing a very lengthy and thorough outline of my experience allowed me, through the PLAR program, to receive my designation. I believe the program is an excellent one because it is, first of all, allowing me to review in detail what experience I had and how that experience qualified me to have the CAE designation. Furthermore, I'm proud to say that I have the designation as I've been involved with CSAE for many years and I feel like I'm truly home now. One of the interesting things is some of the people that we have PLA'd have been involved in the industry for a long time, and some of them arguably should be teaching courses, and I'm sure they will be one day. But this is an opportunity for people to get credit where it's been earned and to really, from an evidence-based approach, show the society how they've qualified and how they've met the standard or exceeded it. So it's a great program, and I like that it's built in some flexibility. Having waited for some files in my office, I can tell you people can take 6 months to put together a robust portfolio. And I've had people cite examples back to 1978 when they were involved in volunteer work, because some of the other things that are included in the competencies include recruitment and retention of volunteers. If you're an association and all of your members are the provinces, how would you have ever had an opportunity to recruit? Because your members just show up, right? They didn't choose to come, they came. So there's people that have to literally go back into like history vaults and pull, you know, when they were chair of an alumni association from 1978 and produce some like programs of events that they've run and that kind of thing. So that's what I like about it. It's not confined to the last 10 years, but the last 10 years have to be experience in the association world. So that's the end of the formal presentation, and I'm sure we are excited to take some questions. We all have a different perspective on the exam.
Okay, so Christine has actually... So Christine has actually done the exam because she has her CAE designation. I don't have my CAE designation, but I have completed 2 out of the 5 courses. So I'm midstream. I'm in the process myself. So one day I will face that exam. So what it is because we really wanted an exam that forces you to demonstrate the application of what you're doing, because multiple choice may or may not do that. So, and it was conceived of by our lead instructor. Our lead instructor, who helped move this program online back in 97, 98, and who's the primary author, helped create the format of the exam. And so it's 3 questions, and it will put you in the position of preparing a report or doing some sort of analysis. They're not equally weighted. They're weighted at 25 marks, 35 marks, 45 marks. So you are putting together a report. So when you've completed 1 question, you could usually have 10 pages in front of you. Here's my answer for this question. And so what it is, it's emailed because it's an open book exam. So open book. So the only thing you can't do, which is hard. Open book, yeah, many options, might be too many options. So what happens is it is sent out by email to the person, and it's released at noon on a Friday. They have till noon on the Sunday to send it back. And it is open book, so they can call their colleagues. They cannot contact any staff or instructors as they're doing the exam. And they have to receive the questions and figure out, because you're asked, the question is this long, it's a paragraph. And then you're going to produce 10 pages because you're trying to figure out what's being asked here, what are the things that I have to look at. So you're being judged on how can you assess the situation, what's your analysis, what are your recommendations coming forth, are there any procedures that need to be created or tools or templates. So you're trying to pull all this together, and you're drawing on your knowledge and your resources yourself. So hopefully you've printed out your 5 courses or whatever you have gone through your discussion questions, and knowing where the information is for yourself if you've got to look something up as you pull it together, or you've got your little list ready of your phone of friends, right, to if you need to bounce an idea off of somebody. So that's what happens, and it's that everything is done in this 48-hour time frame. So when somebody goes through 1 course, the course is done over 12 weeks. And they'll be doing a couple of assignments, like in-depth assignments in those 12 weeks. So there's time to start it. There's time to research. There's time to reflect. There's time to send it to somebody if you want another opinion. All that, you've got lots of time to do in the space of 12 weeks. In 48 hours, having to do that for 3 cases, that's pretty intense. So I think that's part of, but that, so not being an ED myself, I haven't had to experience that, but I would guess that there are occasions in the world of an ED when you have to pull something together in 48 hours and there's no ifs, ands, or buts about it.
Yeah, I think that's exactly true, Josette. There's some classmates that I had when we did the designation in 2008 that said, you know, this wasn't, and it reminds you of some of the professions we assess. This, I don't remember reading this word for word in the course notes. And when you understand that this is a competency-based exam, extrapolation of information, application of new information, it was a very good exam. It was very realistic. But if you've never been in a situation where you're a chief staff officer and you literally are given a situation on a Friday that your board needs an answer for on Monday, there's never enough time to do anything. It's how good of a job can you do with the time given. And I literally had classmates that got through they picked whichever one of the questions they wanted to do and couldn't finish the other. You have to, and it's kind of like on any certification exam, you have to get enough points to pass. It doesn't matter if you did the first one perfect. If you only score 45 out of 100, you still fail. So it's all about timing, it's all about prioritizing, it's all about which one's going to be easier for me, which one's going to be more difficult, because your perspective and my perspective will be very different too. And most people base it on their own associations, but some also base it on running the figure skating club. You know, it doesn't have to be strictly business. It can be association work that may or may not be paid.
The exam itself? Yes, well, the people who are grading the exams, they are provided with a marking guide, right? So they've got the questions and they've got a marking guide. So, and for the exam process, an exam can be marked by up to 3 people, actually, when it does come in. So, and the exam markers are not the assessors. That's a different group. There are different groups of people. So we haven't called upon Christine to mark any exams.
Oh, no, there's room to grow.
There's in your continuing engagement with CSAE, who knows? But so the exam markers have the marking guide. So a question that is worth 25 marks, for example, could have 10 marks allocated for the assessment of the situation, 10 marks for the analysis and recommendation, 5 marks for structure, organization, creation of procedures, for example. And so they're guides. So if one exam, I'll give you a situation, the passing mark on our exam is 60%. So an exam comes in and it's rated at 58 or 57%. It has to go to another exam marker. That exam marker may grade this at 63%. Okay, we've got to split. It's got to go to the 3rd exam marker, right? So they each have the same marking guide. And yes, to a certain extent, they're drawing on their own experience and what they would expect, but they know how many marks are to be allocated for certain points. So there are certain points that the candidate has to hit when they're doing their exam.
You require 80%?
Yeah.
How did you arrive at that?
Yeah, good question, because it's been argued to me that the pass mark is too low. So that's...
Talk about the pass rate too, though. Pass rate's important.
Well, okay, so the pass rate over the last, I think, is a year and a half. Yeah, 78 or 79% of the people who do the exam succeed on their first pass, on their first try through it. It's been argued to me that the pass rate of the exam is 60%, and the pass rate of the exam is in line with the passing mark of the courses. That's the thing. So when somebody does CAE 100, to be successful in that course, they have to have attained at least a minimum of 60%. And the pass rate of the exam was set in alignment with that many years ago. But then we brought in the PLAR, and we're really relying on that person to be able to demonstrate they've learned whatever we could teach them and being able to assess that. And we set the bar higher because we don't have any honorary CAEs, for example. There's no honorary CAE designation, and we want to make sure we're doing justice to the designation. That, okay, if somebody's going to earn these 3 initials without having done any of the courses and without being tested on the exam, we need to be sure they've really got the goods. So I think the thinking was we need to make sure we set the bar higher for that. And it's been argued, at least by one person every year, that we should be raising the mark of the exam, the pass mark of the exam. It hasn't happened yet, but who knows?
Yeah, if I can just help out too, for instance, on a course like CAE 400, the topics that they have to have 80% of the coverage in is publications, events, education, advocacy, fundraising, credentialing, standards, affinity programs, and strategic alliance partnerships. So if they're missing 2 or 3 elements of that, they won't get their 80% achievement. And because the biggest thing that could happen is somebody could get to the certification exam, and any one of these 44 competencies are open for fair game. So imagine if you had never done credentialing and accreditation, and the question that is worth 35% on your exam is about establishing a credentialing and accreditation program. So they want to make sure that whoever gets to the exam has a fair chance of getting through it, because not everyone who gets credit for the courses goes to exam.